Hi, I'm Brian Freeman, and I'm going to read to you from the first chapter of my thriller, The Voice Inside. Frost Easton felt a shiver in the house, which jolted him from a deep sleep. He assumed it was the beginning of an earthquake. His eyes shot open, blue and wide. In an instant, he was off the sofa where he typically slept and on his feet in the chill of his Russian Hill home. His black and white cat, Shaq, sensed the disturbance too. Frost saw Shaq frozen on the coffee table with his back arched and his tail puffed like the bloom of a bottle brush tree. He waited for the ground beneath them to shudder like a funhouse ride. This was San Francisco. Tremors routinely shook the city with a rumble of subterranean thunder. Most came and went without doing damage, but he'd lived through the deadly Loma Prieta quake when he was only 8 years old. You never knew when the next big one was coming. However, Frost saw none of the telltale signs of a temblor this time. This wasn't an earthquake. This was something else. He realized that the disturbance was man-made. A bitter breath of cigarette smoke lingered in the house, the way it did when a smoker passed you on the street. Shaq, who was normally an oasis of calm, tensed his entire feline body and emitted a throaty growl, as if to say an intruder had been here. When Frost glanced at the glass door leading to the patio, he noticed that it was 6 inches open, letting in the night air. Someone had been inside the house. He crossed to the patio door and stepped outside. It was the middle of Saturday night. It was Halloween, and the coastal air was cold and damp. The city fell off sharply below the railing, leading down over flat rooftops toward the blackness of the bay. Frost wore sweats and a t-shirt with a caricature of Mark Twain on the front. His feet were bare. His slicked back brown hair was messy. He grabbed the patio railing and listened, but he heard no evidence of someone escaping nearby, no car engine on the street, no movement in the dense foliage on the hillside below him. It felt like a dream, but it wasn't. Shaq scampered outside to join him. Using his claws, the tiny cat did his best King Kong imitation by wrapping his paws around Frost's leg and climbing up to his shoulder as if it were the summit of the Empire State Building. "I've mentioned that those claws of yours hurt, right?" Frost said, grimacing at the pinpricks in his skin. Shaq purred and ignored him, as if all were right with the world again. The cat's tail swished against Frost's beard, and his paws batted at the bedhead tufts sticking up from Frost's hair. The two of them went back inside. In the darkness, Frost crossed through the living room to the formal dining room, which doubled as his office. He dug inside the pocket of his black sport coat, which was draped over one of the chairs. His badge was untouched. His pistol was still in its holster. Frost retrieved it, and with the gun in his hand, he checked the upstairs rooms one by one. He was alone in the house, and yet something wasn't right. "What about you, Shaq?" Frost murmured as he came back downstairs. "Did you see who it was?" Shaq simply turned and made a beeline for his empty food bowl. Frost followed him into the kitchen and filled it. He opened the refrigerator and grabbed a plastic bottle of orange juice. In the living room, he took a swig of orange juice and resealed the bottle. He was wide awake now. Then a shrill alarm filled the room, startling him. It came from the bar near the kitchen where his phone was charging. He recognized the wake-up buzzer, which was as harsh and loud as the shout of a drill sergeant. He always set an alarm for 6 o'clock in the morning, but it wasn't even close to that time yet. Before he could get up to turn it off, a second alarm blared from upstairs. The clock in the master bedroom wailed like a fire signal demanding attention. And then another clock, another alarm in one of the guest bedrooms upstairs, and another alarm in the third bedroom. Then the radio in the kitchen turned on, broadcasting KSFO talk radio at top volume. Frost sprang to his feet. What the hell? Finally, one more alarm clanged like the warning bells of a railroad crossing. This one came from the dining room. Frost didn't even own a clock that made a noise like that. He stood there surrounded by a deafening chorus of bells, buzzers, radios, and alarms, and he watched Shaq stampede like a madman up and down the stairs in confusion. Frost went to shut down the alarms one by one, but when he picked up his phone, he noticed the time staring back at him in bright digital numbers. 3:42 a.m. The sight of those numbers stopped him cold. He was paralyzed by his memories. Another minute passed before he broke out of his trance long enough to switch off the alarm. Then he ran upstairs and yanked out the plugs for the clocks in the bedrooms, and he turned off the radio in the kitchen. Finally, he went to find the strange clock in the dining room. A double-bell Halloween clock sat on the table. Its face was orange and black, like a grinning jack-o'-lantern, and black bat wings jutted from the sides, waving up and down with the noise of the alarm. The intruder had left the clock for him. Trick or treat. The clapper hammered back and forth between two bells, making a noise louder than any of the others. He didn't know how to stop it. He shook it, he pushed buttons, he twisted knobs. Finally, with his head pounding, he took the clock to the sink and smashed it with a hammer from the utility drawer. The bells finally went silent, but his ears rang with the echo of the alarms. 3:42 a.m. This wasn't an accident or a Halloween prank. It was a reminder, a taunt. Someone knew exactly what that time meant to Frost and knew that he would understand its importance. 5 years had passed since the last victim was discovered. 4 years since Rudy Cutter was found guilty of murder and sent away for life. Even so, Frost never forgot. 3:42 a.m. That was the time set on the broken watches that had been left on the wrist of every victim. The watches, each one different, each one belonging to the previous victim, were a bloody chain tying together the 7 women who had died during Rudy Cutter's killing spree, including Frost's sister, Katie. This wasn't just a sick game. Something else was going on. Frost felt a draft, and when he listened, he heard the wind whistling like a ghost. When he made his way to the house's white-tiled foyer, he saw that the front door was ajar. It opened and closed, as currents of air dragged it back and forth an inch at a time. He crossed the foyer and ripped open the door. One of Frost's long-bladed kitchen knives, exactly like the knives Rudy Cutter had used in all his murders, had been impaled deep in the chambered walnut of the door. The knife held a small postcard in place. It was something you'd buy at one of the dozens of souvenir shops at Fisherman's Wharf. On the front of the postcard was a black and white 20s-era photograph, which showed the famous Cliff House restaurant overlooking the Pacific surf. Frost didn't miss the significance of the location. Cliff House rose above the sand and rocks of Ocean Beach. He'd found Katie there, in the back seat of her blue Chevy Malibu. Frost retrieved a latex glove from inside the house. He didn't want to disturb any fingerprints, although he doubted that he'd find any. He took hold of a corner of the postcard with his gloved hand and turned it over. His name was scribbled on the address block of the postcard, but the street address written below his name wasn't for the house on Russian Hill. Instead, it was for a location somewhere in the Mission District. Somebody wanted him to take a drive. The postcard had a message for him, too. One sentence. Can you live with a lie? So that's how The Voice Inside begins. If you want to keep reading, The Voice Inside is available right now in hardcover, paperback, ebook, and audio. You can find out more about this book and all of my novels at my website, bfreemanbooks.com. Happy reading!